Well, here we are in Rogerstone, which is a village on the northwest frontier of Newport West constituency. And we're here today because I wanted to film outside the Bethesda Baptist Church, because 70 years ago, on the 20th of March 1948, my parents were married in this church. Well, not quite this church, because as you can see, it's a modern church, but in the building that was on this site, a little chapel that dates back to 1742. The date is immortalised on the side of the new building. And without that event of my parents getting married, I wouldn't be here today, and I wouldn't be the candidate in the Newport West by-election. So Rogerstone has a lot to answer for, but in a good way.
We're here in Newport at the campaign headquarters for Neil Hamilton's bid to become Member of Parliament for Newport West. How's the campaign going, Neil?
Well, I think Theresa May's doing her best for us because I think the scales will have fallen from everybody's eyes over the course of the last few days as to what her plan has been all along, which is to fiddle about doing next to nothing for 3 years and then present us with a deal which is even worse than staying in the EU, and to force Tory MPs in particular and any Brexiteer in Parliament to choose between her deal, which is worse than staying in the EU, and actually staying in the EU itself. So the deal is no deal and there is no choice. So UKIP is the only party which stands out against this, because Labour, Liberals, Tories, Plaid Cymru, you name them, they all remain fanatics. UKIP is the only alternative, and that's the message I'm putting across here in Newport.
And how's that message going down with the people in Newport?
Well, I think it's going down very well, and what I'm very pleased to see is that there are almost no Labour posters around, particularly in the poorer areas where Labour would have piled the votes up years ago when Labour did represent the working class. Today, they don't represent ordinary people at all. They are not interested in the views of ordinary people on a whole range of issues, not just Europe, immigration, cultural issues, green taxes piled onto your electricity bills to pay for forested windmills and millions to go into the pockets of developers. None of these things helps ordinary people at all. And so UKIP is fighting this not just on Brexit, although that obviously is by a country mile the biggest issue of the day, but we're fighting it also as the voice of ordinary people, because we are their voice today. The old parties don't speak for them at all.
And what are our particular policies that you think will appeal to those ordinary people that may be struggling a bit?
Well, first of all, we've got to control our borders. That's one of the main reasons why people voted for Brexit in the referendum. We've spectacularly failed to control our borders. We've added 6 million people to our population since 1997 through immigration alone. Theresa May was Home Secretary for 6 years. She's been Prime Minister for 3 years. In that time, she has been responsible for the immigration system, and she has added nearly 3 million people to our population. That is a city the size of Cardiff added to our population every single year. Or in a local context, that's twice the size of Newport added to our population every single year. And that has mammoth implications for housing. We have to build a new house for an immigrant every 6 minutes in Britain in order to cope with the inflow. Our transport structure is clogged and overflowing. Green fields around our cities are being built over, and it's depressed wages, particularly for those at the lower end of the income scale. So again, it's the poorest in society, the most vulnerable in society, who are the real victims of these establishment parties.
And I understand in Newport itself there are needs for transport infrastructure that haven't yet been constructed. What's your view on what's needed for Newport?
Well, the M4 is a problem at rush hours in Newport, because there are various pinch points where traffic just builds up and the traffic flow just grinds to a halt. This is a problem which has been in existence for many, many years, and nothing has been done. This is actually a Welsh Assembly responsibility, Welsh Government responsibility. It's nothing to do with the UK Government or a Member of Parliament. But the Welsh Government has got a proposal to spend up to £2 billion on this road, which is why it'll never get built, because the maximum borrowing power of the Welsh Government is only £1 billion. So the First Minister is currently sitting on the report on this, and of course he's using the by-election now as an excuse to dither further and take no decision. It's just like HS2, one of these mammoth projects that, if it ever gets built, is a colossal waste of money and diversion of resources from things that are more worthwhile. For a fraction of the price, we could improve the way the existing road system operates by adding lanes at junctions and making roundabouts bigger and so on. And there is another route which UKIP supported in the last Assembly election, going to the south of Newport for a fraction of the cost of the so-called black route, which would double the size of the M4 going round Newport. So again, UKIP has led the way, as we did on the abolition of tolls on the Severn Bridge, which was a policy that we stood on in the last election. That has now actually taken place. So if they adopted our policy on the road system as well, we would have had that new traffic system by now for a fraction of the price.
Now that objective organisation, the BBC, tells me that we're only a few days away from the cliff edge.
Yes.
What's your view of the cliff edge?
Well, I think it's more a curb than a cliff edge. It's the sort of thing you might trip over, but even if you fell over, then you're not likely to do yourself a great deal of damage, and unless you're as uncoordinated as Theresa May, of course. But it's no, there is no cliff edge, of course, because we trade perfectly well with the 85% of the global economy, which is not part of the EU, on WTO terms. So where's the problem? The average tariff that the EU charges on imports into Europe is 2.5% to 3%. There's a problem with agriculture, and there's a 10% tax on cars, but as 86% of all the cars that are registered in Britain every year are imported into Britain rather than exported from Britain, then this is not likely to be much of a problem either. It's the Germans who need to worry, because 1 in 7 of all the vehicles made in Germany is exported to Britain. So if there's a 10% tax on their exports to us, I think the worthy burghers of Bavaria and other places where cars are made are going to come off worst. But the EU, of course, doesn't care about the impact of economic policies on ordinary people, because all they're concerned about is carrying on with their mad political project of federalising everything and having a European superstate, and everybody else can go to hell. So I'm not worried about the problems of transition at all. We've got £39 billion that Theresa May wants to give away that we could spend on coping with these temporary problems.
And I understand that there's a potential to stand still even those tariffs that are projected.
Yeah, well,
Can you enlarge on that?
Theresa May's government published a tariff schedule just last week, and 87% of all the existing tariffs that the EU charges are going to be set at zero under the UK government's plans. So this is a small problem. It's a problem of transition. And I remember when we joined what we then called the Common Market in 1973, we had problems of transition coming in. So of course change implies that there are certain short-term costs. But what we're interested in is the long-term economic gain. And more than that, the right to elect the people who make our laws for us, and the right to boot them out if we don't like what they do. The EU is a fundamentally anti-democratic project, not just an undemocratic project. It was specifically designed to get around what the original founders of the EU thought of as the problem of democracy. That when the people have their say, they can actually disagree with the technocrats, and that's what our referendum result was. But now we see how the technocrats, of course, never give up, and they're fighting back tooth and nail to try to undermine everything that we've fought for so many years and thought we'd achieved in June 2016. So, this is a watershed moment for us, and all those people who were UKIP supporters up to the referendum and thought that was our job done, perhaps now have woken up and realised that actually our job was only half done in getting the referendum and that result. And it's much more difficult in a way to cope with the deep state in all its manifestations, UK government and all its international ramifications, the BBC, as you mentioned a moment ago, buggers broadcasting communism, and the big business, the CBI, TUC, trade union movements, they're all in it together. And it's a massive worldwide global conspiracy, actually. I think it is a conspiracy. Davos man is fighting as hard as he can to ensure that Tony Blair's vision of a new world order is brought about. And that's all I need to say, really. If Tony Blair's in favour of it, there's only one way to go, isn't there?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Neil, and best of luck for the fourth, I think it's the
But anyway, it just shows the commitment of UKIP members to our party at this crucial time in our national life, because this is the most important issue in British politics that there could be. It's all about self-government, the right of the people to be represented by people they vote for, and the corollary is, of course, to vote out, which we shall certainly do to the present lot as soon as possible. And all those people who want a people's vote, well, they've got one on the 4th of April here in Newport.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, exactly.
So that's for the people of Newport to give their opinion on the performance, not just of Theresa May, but also Jeremy Corbyn. If ever there was a time in our national history where both the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition were more useless, I'd like to know when that time was. So let's go out, hit the streets and boot them out.
Can I say, before you all disappear, thank you so much for turning out, because I've been to many by-elections over the years. They're only made possible by the people that turn out and support them. A party is only as big or as strong as the members. It isn't about the leader. We shouldn't be a cult. I certainly don't want it to be a cult. I want it to be a party of ordinary people, and it's the activists who can actually be motivated to go out and do something that make it work, and that's you, and thank you very much for coming.
And thank Gerard.
If you want to support a return to proper parliamentary democracy and for Britain to unite to make a success of Brexit, join UKIP today. Go to www.ukip.org or phone us on 0333 800 6800.